In this new series, I've decided to log it like a journal. I am a lone survivor of this world, depicting for any others out there the struggles I endured to survive. Maybe one day I'll find others out there in the snow. But first I have to live, and find a way, if possible, to thrive in what is left in this primal winter. I came around trapped in a pile of snow, with no sign of other life around me. I remembered the world shaking, and the heavens opening as an onslaught of snow fell down upon us all. But when I looked around, there was no one. Only a chest with the meagre supplies I had hastily hidden when word had reached us of the impending disaster. It all happened so fast, but if I had survived, then others had to be out there too, waiting for the hope of rescue. I set off immediately in hopes of finding shelter from the storm. Perhaps in a few days, the sky would clear and others would emerge from the snow. I came soon to realise that there were other things out there, but I would not call them living. Skeletal monstrosities armed with bows and arrows, and undead creatures you hear only about in film and in stories. It seems their only mission was to hunt me through the wastes. I wanted to hide, bury myself somewhere, but the sand trickled through my fingers and I knew my only hope was to keep running. Eventually, I found a cliffside made of actual stone instead of sand, and with the pickaxe I'd squirreled away, I was able to hide inside and take stock of all that was happening. At first I thought maybe I could stay here a while. I had some wood and now some stone with which I could craft and create. But I soon realised this shelter would only be good for the night. My food would not last long, and nor would the wood I had stored. But I could hardly see a thing, and this desert seemed to stretch on for miles. I decided I would make some torches and cook what food I could, and stay here for the night. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep, but at least I would be safe, for now. It was hard to tell the day from the night, with the clouds thick in the sky, but I grabbed my meagre supplies, forgoing the glass I had smelted for fear that the sound would wake the demons around me, and ran. I ran blindly into the storm and clambered up hills, praying I would see clearer from above. But instead I went tumbling down a sharp cliffside and rattled all my bones. Well, that's one way to do it. I ran for what felt like days, my heart thundering in my chest as I tried to ignore the pain of my fall. But eventually I found salvation in the shape of a hidden forest. Trees! Got to work immediately with my axe, thankful for the cover they provided. It didn't fight off the bitter winds, but I could at least see clearly under the canopy, and I was no longer getting wet from the snow on my head. I decided to build myself a small, pathetic little hut from the trees. I would be safer here than in the desert, and with the trees around me, I at least knew I would never be short of firewood. It was small, and only had a dirt floor, but once the snow was gone I felt safer, if only a little. I could hear footsteps in the snow. I doubted the fear of these monsters would ever leave me. I was fortunate enough to still have some sand left from the desert and decided to install some windows. At least then I would know what was waiting for me in the blizzard. To be truthful, the forest worried me. I had heard tales of the things that lurked here, but what choice did I have? It was shelter in the forest or condemned to the desert. I never used to believe the old stories of great mansions in the forests, filled with grey-faced beasts that were neither man nor monster. But now I felt inclined to believe most anything. With my windows installed, I decided to dig downwards. I knew our people's history, how we started from nothing and dug underground to forge stronger tools and protect ourselves. I remembered my family stories, tales of the monsters within. I was fortunate enough to find iron ore fairly quickly and thought maybe the old family gods were looking down on me. But in this empty frozen waste, it was hard to believe I held anyone's favour. But when I journeyed further down, I realised any gods that were watching were mocking me. You see, I knew our people's history, tales of deep underground chasms that could take you down to the depths of the world, and infested mineshafts our people had abandoned after one too many deaths. It was one of these abandoned mineshafts I had the fortune, or misfortune, depending on your outlook, to find. I ran back to the surface to take stock of my find. I could hear more monsters waiting for me down there. But what if I could find food? What if the old miners had left things behind? Things that could save me? With what little iron I had, I forged a pickaxe, sword, and breastplate. It wasn't much, but it was a damn good start. And whilst my iron smelted, I came across something extraordinary. That is a green grass block. There was nothing green here, only the bright white of the snow, but it gave me hope. I decided I would find a way to build out to it, to have it spread onto the fresh dirt in my home. It would be softer to sleep on than the coarse dirt, but it also made me wonder what else I could grow here. Perhaps not all was lost after all. With new hope bubbling inside me, I headed back down into the darkness, but fear quickly returned. I could hear so many things lurking in the dark, strange hissing and ethereal warbles like nothing I'd ever heard before. I found more iron and decided the best thing I could do was forge myself more armour so that when I did eventually string up the nerve, I would at least be better protected. Once again, as my iron smelted, I made a start on expanding. It was frightening work, but if I was going to be here in the long term, I was going to have a real home and not just a shack. The snow makes everything harder, often falling faster than I can clear it. Perhaps I should take a leaf out of the tree's book, so to speak, and build a great canopy overhead to keep the snow at bay. It's not like I'll ever see the sun again anyway. After steeling my nerves for the 1000th time, and wishing I had something stronger than just teeth-chatteringly cold water, I finally ventured into the mineshaft. My only goal was to maybe find food and definitely find resources. But there were monsters at every turn. I found that placing torches and lighting the area seemed to help some, but no amount of torches in the world will ever light this place up in its entirety. I spent so much time down in the darkness, every twist and turn looking the same as the one before. Time had not been kind to these forgotten mineshafts. Pieces of walkway were missing, rotted away and leaving only emptiness behind. You could look down the edges, into the darkness, and hear the monsters below. I journeyed back to the surface only to expand my home, before returning into the darkness. And yet again I was once both rewarded and punished. I found a strange device filled with darkness that spat green monsters into existence, but also seeds, a remnant of those who came before, and hope that I would not starve. I found another creature lurking down there, a spider with a bite that was poison. It made my blood burn in my veins, and I was lucky that I did not perish. It was in that moment that I realised I could not win down here, and needed to retreat. I took several wrong turns, but finally found my way out, and back to the relative safety of my shack. I realised once I was out that I hadn't collected any water, and I knew I would have to return to the depths if I wanted to survive. I forced myself to eat the rotten flesh I had gathered from those green-skinned beasts. It made me want to vomit, but once my stomach settled, I felt my strength return to me. There was just so much death waiting for me, and only me. My heart has not stopped racing since I awoke in the snow. To distract myself, I decided to continue expanding. Otherwise I would lose myself to despair and throw myself to the monsters now waiting outside. Eventually I reached the grass I had seen from my window. I had to use some stone when I ran low on wood, but it was worth it. There were some hiccups along the way, but even small victories are accomplishments here and worthy of celebration. I will end my writings here for now. Perhaps one day someone will find this old journal and shall think of me. Or perhaps there are others out there, alone and frightened as I am. If there is someone out there waiting, I pray we find each other, and soon. Sincerely yours, Rose.